present and be content and look around and enjoy what is here now.
In a world where so many people are afraid to be who they really are, your true, authentic presence is like a superpower.
Freedom. As we move into presence, we move into our power. We move into access to more resources as bandwidth is freed up.
Okay, it's 12 o'clock Pacific. It's 3 o'clock in the East. I think in the UK it's 8 p.m. and in Central Europe it's 9 p.m. on a Monday, which means it is time for us to posse up.
Happy Memorial Day.
Yeah,
for those of you in the U.S.
And we have, coincidentally, an all-U.S. panel today. Joining me today is Dr. Fred Blum and Danielle McMahon. And we're going to be talking today about the power of presence. Zoom out a little bit because we've been talking about it in the power of presence in relationship and the power of presence in tapping into our innate resources of resiliency and other resource. And Fred, I want to open it up with you because you had the coolest post that we've all been kind of sharing. And it's the post that you had in the snippet there. When so many of us are afraid to be actually, let me allow you to quote it because it's your post, but it's such a brilliant thing to kick the show off. So would you share that with us?
Yeah, it was funny because it was literally when I was making the video for Malcolm, who's in the background today, and he created that awesome opening video. And he said, give me a short clip. And I just made that up on the spot. And I went, ooh, that's good. I'm going to post that on Facebook. And it was essentially in a world where so many people are afraid to be who they really are, being your authentic self is like a superpower. And it's interesting how much response, how much feedback I got on that is like, people are like, yes, that's exactly it. But it's one of those, I don't want to say easier said than done exactly, because in a certain way, what could be easier than being who you already are? And yet there seems to be, for most of us, a lot of layers that we put between us and that authentic self. I'm sure we'll get to talk more about that today.
Yeah, I think that would be a good place to focus on that. And Danielle, let me have you introduce yourself a little bit to our group, those of us who may not have seen it, and then Fred will circle back with you, and I'll give you a little bit of background on myself as well. So Danielle, tell us a little bit about your potted bio and how you became to be a teacher of presence.
Well, that was one of the topics I actually suggested for our posse, and maybe we'll do it at some point. How did you get here? How did you become inspired to do this? Because I think certainly in my case and in a lot of people's cases, it wasn't necessarily a pleasant thing. I wasn't necessarily on a winning streak when I got to maybe there's something more to this life than I have imagined, than I have thought about, than I have learned, right? So if you start from that point, I've been at it for 30 years, but actually being in the space of being a professional has only been about 3 years. So I am a speaker and a coach on personal peace. And I say this every time, eventually maybe I'll transition and call myself a people whisperer, but that's what I'm going towards, because I realize that most of what I have learned about presence, I've learned in the presence of horses, through the very first experience I would say that I had of presence was the first time I was on a horse. That's when I understood that you can be entirely consumed, excuse me, in the moment and full of joy. Like, I didn't realize it when I was 6, but looking back on it, that's my touchstone for personal peace and for presence.
Yeah, we've all had those awe-inspiring moments. And, you know, one of the things that we talk about a lot in our group is that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And when we're identified with that human experience, it seems like those awe-inspiring moments of, you know, it could be something as small as a beautiful sunset or being in the presence of a baby or a dog or a horse or, you know, pretty much any animal with the possible exception of a cat. Or maybe they've just taken it to a whole new level. But those become like awe-inspiring moments that we get a little bit of a peek, a little bit of a glimpse into that. So yeah, we'll definitely explore that a little bit more today. Fred, how about you? A little bit about your journey and the work that you're doing.
Yeah. It's hard, I think, to separate the journey from the work, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or at least I think for those of us, you know, on this call today, that's true. You know, I mean, I guess I could be doing a completely different thing professionally than, you know, necessarily is tied to my journey. But for me, it is very tied together. You know, like Danielle, I could certainly get into the stories. I mean, I'll tell it briefly, but you know, I mean, because I'm someone who's really, I think we all are, someone who's invested a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of money into like figuring out what does it really mean to live a happy, fulfilled, contributing life, whatever that, you know, whatever it is that your sort of pot of gold at the end of the rainbow is. And I worked really hard at it for many, many years, spent a lot of money doing it, you know, including professional school, as well as reading and seminars and all this stuff. And by the way, on the outside, I'm sure it looked like I was doing pretty well, meaning that, you know, I was a holistic chiropractor for 25 years. I built successful practices. You know, I was married. I had a great kid. I looked, you know, like I was living the dream in a way. And yet, why was it that I would wake up most mornings with that feeling of dread, like that sense of what's wrong with me? I still felt, you know, after decades of working on myself, that I still had to be in competition with my twin brother. There was just like this ongoing sense that like somehow I was never quite enough. And what finally dawned on me after all those years and time and money, et cetera, was that I had been looking in the wrong direction. That I was trying to get my happiness, as well as my value, my self-worth, whatever you want to call it, from an experience outside of me. And you know, one of the cores of my work and what I teach with my clients is that that's never going to work. I mean, it might work for a very short period of time. You know, you get a new car, everybody's happy. They get a new car. It's cool. Like, nothing wrong with that. But you can't expect that car to make you happy for the rest of your life. So it's an endless like hamster wheel. And what I saw is that instead of looking outward, I had to look inward. I had to find the source of happiness in myself. And when we talk about presence, this ties directly to that, which we'll get into.
Yeah, we'll definitely dive into that. And that's similar to my journey. I was a financial advisor in a previous life, and then I became a coach for other financial advisors. And as I became more well-known in the industry, I was working with more and more successful appearing advisors from the outside. They were top in their field. They were going on all the trips. They, you know, had big homes and lots of toys, and outwardly they could have a really impressive looking Facebook profile if they're just showing all of the look how cool my life is type of photos that so many people do. But on the inside, they were experiencing the same thing that you mentioned, the same thing that I experienced, the same thing that I sense Danielle is talking about as well, that they were massively good at taking action. They were really good at implementing. They were very good at the outward game of working with clients and giving them advice and taking good care of them. And yet they were finding that the new car and the bigger house or the boat or whatever only gave that brief respite of, it temporarily called off the end of seeking and allowed for a moment just to be. But, that new car smell kind of wears off after a while. So let me get a little bit of an idea of you guys of how do you think we got here? Not us personally, but us as a species that has been conditioned to look outside of ourselves, that us plus the new car, the new boat, six-pack abs, the right relationship, enough money in the bank, or whatever it is that we're chasing in the pursuit of happiness that has gotten us to look in that wrong direction, look outside of ourselves. What are your guys' takes and your experience on that? And how do you help clients through that process of realizing that that's not the answer?
Go ahead, Danielle.
That was a really long question.
Okay, so let me
as a collective, we have been conditioned to do that, right? That's sort of our upbringing, not just in our family, but in our society and our culture. We are massively marketed to, and to be marketed to, you're going to be told that you have a problem that this product will fix. You have a fear that this product will take away. You need this product. You need this. You need that. So we are bombarded with that sense of we are not enough. We are not good enough unless we have what the Joneses have, unless we do what the Joneses do. I just feel like that is I don't even know that it's from an affluent society, because even in less affluent societies, you're still looking at that same kind of enculturation that what we need is outside of us. And it's also a way that makes us easy to control. Right? So if we are distracted by the things, accumulating the things and making the milestone markers and achieving those things, then we're not interested so much. We don't have time to be interested in what is it to be a human? What is it to be in fulfilling relationships? What is it to be fulfilled? Right? So that's the question that we don't ask. We just keep chasing those outside things.
Yeah, the conditioning is definitely a big part of it. I remember Seth Godin had a study. I don't think he conducted it, but he was frequently quoting it back from like 2004, 2005, that the average adult human that does any type of consumption of media sees between 3,500 and 4,000 advertisements a day. And the vast majority of them are telling us when you have XYZ, or when you lose XYZ, or when you overcome XYZ, it's going to be Fred 2.0. And that'll equal a happier Fred or a happier Danielle.
Mm-hmm.
Fred, when you start working with a client, how do you begin the conversation with them about suggesting, you're looking outside of yourself and you're looking in the wrong direction? How do you shift that conversation to one where the search is within?
Can I, before we get to that, may I give my take on Danielle's answer as well, or what the same answer to that question?
Yeah, 100%, absolutely.
And I'll make it brief, but in essence, to me, I think the conditioning, as Bobby's calling it, begins almost from birth. Mm-hmm. In that we are born into this world as oneness. And The idea of oneness is something that I think we can touch on today, but I think is critical in understanding true, authentic presence. So we're born into this world not knowing, like not having any idea that we are separate from our mother, from anything, right? We just experience life as pure presence. I think this is why we love to be around babies, like you mentioned before. It reminds us of something about ourselves that we have long forgotten in most cases. But anyway, so we're born into this world as oneness. Now, we don't have language yet, so we can't literally think something's wrong here. But we get the sense fairly quickly that nobody else seems to be operating from the same rules that I'm operating from, you know, because by this point, pretty much everyone else has already built this ego, right? This identity, which acts as, it creates the illusion of separateness. It creates the sense of, there's a me and a you, and we're not the same. Now, of course, on some level, that's practical for living in the world. But at a level like Bobby, when you mentioned being a spiritual being, having a physical experience, it's just not the truth of who we are. So to come back to the answer to what you just asked me a moment ago about how do I work with clients, there are two phases really in my work. And the first phase, and there's no system, I don't take them through some series of steps because I think everyone is different, but is to help them to see who they really are, you know? So it's called self-inquiry. We're literally going into a process of exploring this identity or ego that we've built and to begin to see really what it is, that it's just a story that we tell, that this identity that I say, I'm me. If I ask, one of the most fundamental spiritual questions that one could ask, but really it's a practical question because it leads you back to the truth, is who are you? And you just listen, the answers that people will give. Oh, I'm an accountant. Okay, got it. So if you weren't an accountant, would you still be you, right? Oh, well, yeah, I'd still be me. Okay, well, then who are you really? Oh, okay, well, I'm a dad. Oh, so I see. So if you never had kids, then you wouldn't be you, right? Right? Or I'm, an American, or I'm there's nothing, if you're really honest about the inquiry, there's nothing you can answer to the question, who are you, that can't be stripped away. And so you begin to see, you get to the point where there's no answer to the question. And this is really important because it needs to be experienced. Like, it might be intellectual is not it, right?
Right.
I made a post on Facebook recently that said something to that effect. And I said, if you're nodding your head right now thinking I got it, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Right? Like, the ego will grab it really quick and try and make it into a thing, like a piece of data that it can use to validate itself. But you get to the point where literally it's like there's no answer. There's no answer. And in the silence, that's really who you are. You are the space in which all of these other things occur. So that's phase one. Phase two is when you begin to live, and it takes as long as it takes, maybe 3 to 6 months of work for people to really begin to become grounded in this what I call true nature or true self. Now we can go out and play in the world of life, knowing that our happiness is no longer dependent on the outcomes. That we can play any game we want. We can set any kind of outcome. I want to make $1 million. I want to end world hunger, whatever it is. And we know that whatever happens, I'm still going to be okay because my happiness is already taken care of.
Yeah. And you're working with what they call an NLP, an end state energy, which even working in the illusion of the perceived reality, it's more effective to be doing that because you're already there. So you're working from a feeling of abundance and that sort of thing. Danielle, working with the animals before you started working with the people, what are some things that you have been able transfer, or how would you answer that same question of when you initially begin working with people, working with clients, how do you introduce them to these concepts that we're talking about, these matters?
Well, some of what I do is help them understand that because they've been educated in a certain way and because they've been enculturated in a certain way, they don't need to beat themselves up about not knowing who they are. They don't need to beat themselves up about not being able to handle their emotions in any kind of productive way or even be in touch with them, because that's not part of what we value culturally. It's not part of what we educate humans to do. So that's the first thing. If I can get someone to the point where they believe and they can say to themselves that I am lovable, that I am love, then we can proceed. It's the same sort of thing that Dr. Fred takes them through, but it's a little bit different approach, because my first insight into why I wasn't in integrity in my life was that although I was a very intelligent person, I had no emotional capabilities at all. Like none. I had two emotions. One of them is like I had okay and messed up. I had a different word for it at the time, but you know what I mean. So those were my two emotions, and I had to start from there and learn like what really feels this way, what's it called, how do I deal with it, how do I get past it, how do I not store it in my body, how do I not store it in my thinking so that I repeat it and repeat it, and it becomes more drastic each time until I start to recognize that trigger for what it is and be able to move through it. And very few people have that kind of capability coming into a search for peace, a search for presence. That's where I generally would start with them. As far as the horses, they will reflect that to you. They will tell you if you are being uptight, if you are being nervous, if you are being afraid. They'll sense that and they'll mirror that to you. And it's easier to see it in the animal and to accept it because there is no language. They're not like criticizing you, they're just reflecting. So
Right.
it's a little bit easier to take, I think, sometimes, because there's not the language to complicate things. They're
Right.
not speaking beings, they're not logical beings. They are just who they are, and we have a huge respect for what they know that's different than what we know, and then we try to instill that respect in them, that they have a respect for who we are. But we can't do it without first giving them that respect. So it's the same kind of thing. If you can't get to the place where you feel loved and lovable, you're not going to have a loving relationship with anything. But in a horse, that could be difficult. That could be a problem.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up the lack of the language and the lack of logic with the horse. There's also a lack of judgment. So they're merely reflecting back and acting as mirror to what they're picking up on. But in the process of doing that, we've had a couple of talks on relationships, and we all know, having worked with multiple individuals, whether it's in a corporate setting or in a relationship, people get real good at firing off other people's triggers, oftentimes doing that unconsciously and unintentionally, but it's there. So, a little look from a horse isn't going to cause you to go inside and go, oh, what is he thinking about me? He thinks I'm too judgmental, or, we're not naturally going to have that reaction. Kind of like what Fred said earlier about the, being in the presence of a baby, being in pure presence with animals. It's the same way. Yeah. And so you mentioned earlier that you had your first really awe-inspiring glimpse with a horse. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, I was 6 years old. So like I said, I didn't understand it at the time. I just knew that I loved horses, right? So we went to a friend's house for dinner. It was a similar family to ours. I'm the youngest of 4 girls, and they had 4 children, and their older girls put me on a horse and just led me across the pasture. And they asked me before they put me up there, and I'm like, well, yeah, I want to be on the horse, and then they asked me if I wanted to go faster, and I'm like, well, yeah, I want to go faster. And it was just like the sensation for me was like I was flying, but I was grounded on this big, strong animal it was beyond description, certainly at the time, and it's almost beyond description now for me. But that feeling of being like, it didn't matter what had happened before then, it didn't matter what was going to happen after that. I was right there on that horse in sheer joy. So when I told that story for the first time, I'm like, oh, that's perfect for the experience of peace, of presence, that's my definition of it. I'm not worried about anything else, not anything that's happened before, not anything that's about to happen. I'm entirely in this moment. So that was that.
Power of presence. What comes up for you, Fred, as you hear Danielle kind of going through her definition? Does that resonate with you, or is yours slightly different?
No, I mean, I think it does. It does resonate with me. It's like being authentic, or even the journey towards becoming, authentic, is a process of subtraction, not a process of addition.
Right.
And that's what I had to see in my story, that it wasn't about more success, more money, more reading more books. That's a big one, right? None of that was going to point me back inward. Like my interpretation of what happened with Danielle is that when she's on that horse and all of that stuff is going on, it crowds out some of the other stuff, the normal identity stuff that might crop up. And then it's just a question of having enough of those experiences to essentially create new neural pathways.
Right.
I describe it to my clients like there's your identity, the one that you mostly have lived as for 30, 40, 50 years, whatever it is, has become like a super highway in your brain. See, because your brain doesn't have like a preference. It doesn't say these are good habits, these are bad habits. It will build pathways for whatever you do repeatedly. So that process is called facilitation, which means literally to make easier. So you practice being a Bobby or a Danielle or a Fred for 30 years, and I become pretty good at that, at being me. And now, so that's like a super highway in my brain now. It means that those pathways are very well established. Now I want to practice being something else. I want to practice living from this place of authenticity, of presence. Well, in the beginning, that might feel like a dirt road up the mountain, like it's not paved, there are wild animals on the trail, whatever. So it's scary, to be on that trail sometimes. And it takes practice, but the more you walk it, the more you become, the more you let go of some part of your identity. You don't have to let it go all at once, but you let go of some piece of yourself that seems so real until you let it go and you realize there's something even more real underneath that.
Yeah, well, you and I, you may not remember this, but it was very profound for me when when this group and the other group that we're involved with was initially forming, and I was becoming involved with it. I would watch the lives that you do, and I would just be amazed that you would just like turn the camera on, nothing going on. Sometimes it didn't seem like you had really thought about what you're going to say before you turned it on. You just
ever,
right?
It just wisdom. You just were a conduit for wisdom to flow. And I remember talking to you about and I was all up in my head. I'm like, well, do you ever like have to do a take two? And what happens if you do a take two? And are any of these embarrassing? And you're like, no, not really. and I was looking. My conditioned mind was looking for a strategy. I wanted Fred's 3 easy steps to being brilliant and present and live on the camera. And we hung up from that call, and I could feel myself agitated. I could feel myself overthinking. And I have trained myself to look for those feelings of discomfort that we label as discomfort, just as a source of inquiry. And I'm like, all right, what's going on here? And very quickly, I realized, well, Fred's just not up in his head. He thinks about what he wants to say. He turns it on. And I was basically doing the same thing with my pre-recorded videos that I was doing. The only thing that I didn't have going on was I didn't have my inner critic going, you could screw this up, you could look foolish, and you could knock your mask that you're holding up to the public askew, and they may be able to see that you're just really the little old guy behind the curtain, not the great and powerful Oz. And the moment that I let that go, then both the videos that I do, which are pre-recorded, they just became one-take wonders. And now all of a sudden, a lot of times I'm thinking about doing a post and I'm starting to type and I'm like, I don't want to type all of this stuff. Then let me just turn the camera on and do a quick live. And it was literally just getting out of my head, silencing my inner critic, and getting rid of that stuff that was not the authentic me, and stopped worrying about the mask that I was holding.
And it's funny, we talk about silencing the inner critic, which is awesome when you can do it. But, and I don't think this is contradicting what you're saying at all. I mean, sometimes you just go anyway.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, God, if I waited around until, like everything was, the stars were aligned perfectly, I'd never open my mouth, which some people might say is a good thing. But, yeah, I'm not by any means going to suggest that every live I've ever done has been brilliant, but they are just wherever I'm at in the moment, and I think that's good enough. Well, they are authentic, and going back to that really being a superpower, and I've seen that with the videos that I've done. I'm much less self-conscious if I screw something up with a word and it makes me laugh. I tend to leave that in, and say, easy for me to say, or something like that. I love the outtakes in the movies.
Yeah, right?
Right? Yeah. When they're laughing, it's like, oh my God, those are human beings. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. So, what are some things that you notice in clients? Or Fred, you mentioned earlier 3 to 6 months. Danielle, I don't believe you've given us a time frame yet, but what are some things that you notice or that your clients notice that are the shifts that are occurring that are helping them understand this is an insight, this is a nice aha moment, and this is the direction that I need to be going?
Why don't you answer that, Bobby?
Okay, I didn't know I was going to have to come up with the answers. It's so much easier just to come up with the questions. I would say the biggest thing that I noticed are those moments that we think are awe-inspiring, whether it's with a horse, with a kid, watching a sunset. I used to live in Florida, and I'd love to go down to Key West. And in Key West, they celebrate the sunset every single day. And often there's hundreds and sometimes thousands of people that are standing there in Mallory Square just watching the sun go down. Silent. And yeah, it's silence. And if anybody were to start saying, oh, well, the reason that we're getting these beautiful colors is the refraction, it'd be like, shh,
we push them off of Mallory Dock.
Yeah. And so for me, there seems to be a shift where people begin to feel the peace and the clarity and the resilience that you have when you are grounded in presence. And, you know, we can all think of an example of having been a commuter and be on the verge of road rage and want to blow somebody's tire out that cuts us off. And other days, the similar experience goes, and we're just like, oh, that guy must be in a rush, and that's okay. I'm not in a hurry. Go ahead, buddy. You know, one more car will help you get there a little bit quicker. And that sense of being grounded and centered and aligned becomes the norm. And then some of the other feelings, to me, it seems to be a signal. I've talked to people about time traveling, that, you know, we have a choice of, are we going to be in the moment? Is our mind going to be full? Mindfulness. Is our mind going to be full of this present moment? Or are you going to worry about what time you've got to leave to get to the airport? Or are you going to be renegotiating the deal that you didn't quite get the outcome that you were looking for in the past? Or are you going to be here right now? And that to me is a small hinge that swings a rather huge door, you know, gets you in the present moment. Not that you can stay there always. Your mind will tend to wander. You'll get sucked back into the illusion until you don't. But when it happens, it's kind of like a mantra. If you're focusing on your breath and doing meditation and you realize that your mind's wandering, you just return to your breath. You don't beat yourself up about it. Mm-hmm. Just return back to that present moment. So,
you know, something that you're pointing to here, which I think is so important, is that there are no irrelevant moments in our lives. You know, I mean, said differently, every single experience that we have is an opportunity for our awakening. Mm-hmm. So in that moment when I'm upset because the guy just is, you know, driving too slow in the left lane, you know, like I can make that, see, again, it's external versus internal. I can make that about him, and I'm upset because that guy is doing X, right? And honestly, I think we live in a world right now that is moving more and more toward the external. Social media really encourages your life to be about likes and, you know, that kind of thing. But in that moment, my experience of this guy on the road is my experience. Now, I'm not the guy. This is just my approach. I don't try and change my experience. I actually think that's a little bit like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Like if I'm upset, I don't try and tell myself not to be upset. I think that just is adding layers of more confusion in the system. I allow myself to be upset, but I turn the focus back into myself. And this is key. You want to have the experience of being upset, the feeling, the tension, whatever, minus the story. Because the story's about out there. The story's about the guy driving too slow. But if I let go of the story and just have the experience, there's a couple of pieces. First of all, I can begin to have insights that might show me another possible way of being. Okay. Secondly, the system itself can process that upset, can take care of it for me. But the key, which everybody's been pointing to this whole time, is to stay present. As long as I'm present, my body, my mind will begin to sort itself out and bring me to a state of peace. But I want to do more than just get back to normal. I want to see through the illusion that I just created in a way that I become even more whole as a result. I become closer to my authentic self as a result. So every experience, it doesn't matter what it is the opportunity to awaken to who I really am.
See, and what you just described is the kind of emotional intelligence that we don't have. The ability to allow the emotion just to be there and to move and not judge it and not judge ourselves for having it, and allow it to give us the information it has to reflect to us, for us, about us, right? And that, I feel like that's one of the most difficult things to really get across to people is if there is no out there, no other, if there is unity, then everything is always a reflection of you. You can always take responsibility for it, move through it, and allow it to give you the information to become more whole, to become more present, to let go of something, to heal something. You don't even have to know what the something is, right?
Yeah,
You had
right.
this sensation, you judged it this way. You can let go of that judgment. I can be an idiot on Facebook and still love and accept myself anyway, right? Like I can just go live, no notes, no thoughts, just like this is my topic and this is what I'm going to talk about. And if it comes out great, great. And if it doesn't, and I really hate it, I suppose I can delete it. I haven't done that because that is how I sort of learned to speak. And the reason I learned to speak that way is because I am a recovering addict, and I had learned through the recovery program that I can save my, I don't know if I'm supposed to cuss on here, my butt or my face, but I cannot save both at the same time, right? So I chose to save my butt. I want to live. I want to have a life worth living. And that's where it started for me. So I just started sharing what my thoughts were, what my feelings were, what my struggles were, what, and I didn't care who was there and who heard it and who judged it. And that was a process, of course, but I got to that point so that when I started doing Facebook Lives, I went through all of that. Like, do I need notes? Do I not need notes? Does it need to be a certain time? Does it just show up and talk? 3 to 5 minutes seems to be my thing. I don't know if that's other people's attention span, but evidently it's mine. So that's just how you can get through those things without having to have that inner critic, without having to have that judgment about it, and just experience it.
Yeah. Now you said something at the very beginning there that I would like to revisit, that we don't have the capability to experience those emotions the way that Fred described it. And I'm wondering, do you think that we really don't have that capability, or is it just not something that
it's not something that's been valued? It's not something that's been taught. We obviously have the capability, but we haven't exercised that capability. Right.
Yeah. And that to me is the shift that I was talking about earlier, that when we get to the point where that becomes a little bit more of the norm. And then when we're not experiencing that, when we don't have access to that, we can inquire and go, okay, what's going on there? Am I showing up for my conditioned self, my constructed identity, or am I showing up as love and being love, or am I seeking love? It to me, it seems like it's a realization that once we get that's who we are. One of the videos that I was doing, I was up at about 2:00 in the morning, and my dog wanted to go to bed, and she was whining, and I kind of lost it a little bit. And I lost it, and I yelled at her. I'm like, "What, Daisy? What do you want? What can I get?" I'd already given her a snack and made sure she was warm and comfy and all of that. And then just the hilarity and the irony of me being here recording a program which I've called Spring into Mindfulness. And I'm so unmindful in the moment that I'm yelling at my dog on camera, which thank God for editing. But I just immediately cracked up and saw the humor in that of oh my God, this is just hilarious. Good for the
so ironic.
Yeah.
There's that great, I think it's a Zen story about you're lying on a boat, right, in the middle of a lake, and it's just floating, and you're looking up at the sky, and you're just so incredibly peaceful. And then another boat bangs into you, and it's it jars you out of your peacefulness, and you spin around ready to really give, in this giant lake, how could this inconsiderate son of a bitch bang into you and destroy your peace? And you realize that the boat is empty, the other boat. It just somehow floated up and hit you. And what do you do with all that anger now, right? It's like suddenly you have all this anger to direct at a person and there's no one to give it to. And it's like that beautiful moment when you can only say, I am angry. I am angry. It's not the boat's fault, or there's nobody to be angry at. So you get to sit with your own experience. And I love what you said about your dog and all that, because it's like, really, yeah. It's like, what am I angry about?
What am I doing?
Happening, It's like, it's great because it shows us how easily we get upset when life doesn't fit my pre-existing conditions.
Yeah.
Which is,
it seems like a lot of the angst and anxiety is our inability to bend the world to our will, and the amount of energy that we place into trying to have a very specific outcome. Yet we've all had situations where we were walking through the shadow of the valley of death at a given moment in time and we hated it. But then we look back and go, wow, thank God, that I went through that, because that taught me this lesson, or that changed this path. And had it not been for that, I wouldn't be where I was today. And getting to the point where we can realize that maybe a little bit quicker would be.
Boy, I tell you, I've always believed that, like, you turn left instead of right at the stop sign and your whole life is different.
Yeah.
So it does. It's like, I don't know. There's the part of what happens the more we move towards this authentic self. And I want to make a point just parenthetically, because I think it's important. I think in the culture, people talk, like, what do they say, right? I'm going on a first date. And what do they say? What's like the advice that everyone likes to give you? Just be yourself.
Which no one does.
Right, because what self are they talking about?
Yeah.
I always want to say, well, how's that been working out for you so far? But because the cultural version, again, like Danielle's pointed out a couple of times, there's really no cultural conversation about the true presence of, like Bobby says, a spiritual being having a physical experience, your true nature, whatever you call it. So to the culture, be yourself means be the authentic version of your personality.
Right.
But it's a funny thing, because your personality is all made up. So how do you it's like saying be an authentic story that you're telling right now. It doesn't even make sense. So it's being who we really are. A lot of the stuff that we're talking about begins to sort itself out, because if we really take the time to slow it down, and this is key, is slowing down enough to see who we are behind the mask, we begin to get a sense that who we already are is stillness, peace, happiness, freedom, clarity. So from that perspective, you're going to respond differently to the circumstances of your life. It's just natural. You don't need someone to tell you how to respond, because there's an authentic response that just comes from that space.
And I think you just answered a question that Miriam asked earlier. What's the difference between being genuine and being authentic?
Mm.
And genuine is being true to your ego self.
Okay,
right?
sure.
I'm telling you who I believe I am, who I think I am. I'm representing to you in a genuine manner but being authentic is much deeper than that. Like, I am trying to get in touch with who I really am. And I am taking this pathway, and these are some of my experiences. What are yours? Will you come with me? That's kind of my take on what the difference is in that.
And Miriam says, thank you.
Yeah, well, we've been on for about 50 minutes or so. So I'd like to just kind of close out our time together with some final thoughts and specifically about what are some ways that if people, Malcolm's been kind enough, and thanks to Malcolm, he is our master of ceremonies today. He's operating behind the scenes, but this show would not go nearly as smoothly without him. So shout out
Be
to
free.
Yeah, I'm not sure the show would exist without
It would
him.
not exist.
we are in debt to MC Free. There is no doubt about it. But share just a little bit about kind of the work that people do with you, or the work that you do with people, and folks that are interested in diving into exploring your work a little bit more, how they can get in touch with you and experience your teaching a little bit more deeply.
Danielle, ladies first.
Okay. So Facebook message is the best way to get a hold of me at this point. I do have a website. It's up there. I do have an email that gets thousands of emails, and I'm not great at sorting through all of that. So Facebook message is the easiest way to get a hold of me. I have a 6-week course in pursuing personal peace, and I have another 10-week course that I'm working on, and I will definitely do a clarity call if you get a hold of me and spend 30 minutes or so talking with you to see if we're a good fit. And if I can help you, I'd be glad to. And if I can't, I have great people to refer you to.
Fred, how about you? How can folks get a hold of you?
Well,
Malcolm's kind enough to put
like magic, there it is. So that's all cool. You can email me. You can check me out on the web. I have a Facebook group that I would love for you to check out, which is being.well. In other words, what we're doing is exploring the relationship between being, as we're talking about here, and the experience of wellness in the world. I love to work with people who are really interested in this journey. So I'm selective about my clients, frankly, because it's not, I'm not interested in helping people make, another $100,000 this year if it's just going to reinforce the same dysfunctional patterns, and there are plenty of people that can help you do that. And I'm not even saying you shouldn't do that. I'm just saying I'm not your guy, but can I tell you a quick story?
Absolutely.
I'll be quick. Many years ago, actually, I had a client come to see me. This is back when I used to live in New York, and his name was Leon. I won't give his last name, but Leon was a highly successful real estate developer in New York City. Leon was worth high 8 figures, like $80 million, and had all the trappings that went along with that kind of, success. He had the private jet, the $20 million house, all of that stuff that he was supposed to have. And you can probably guess my story. Leon was miserable. And he sat in my office one night. It was actually the first time I met him. And he went on for, I'm guessing it was 7 or 8 minutes straight, on and on about how he did everything he was supposed to do. He followed all the rules. He's taking care of everybody. Nobody appreciates him. Nobody understands what he sacrificed to be here, blah, 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 blah. And after about 7 or 8 minutes of me nodding my head calmly while he talked, I mean, he had to get it out of his system, so I respect that. I just put up my hand. Where's my hand? It's like that. Just reversed on the thing. And I said, Leon, what if you could have everything in your life that you've worked so hard for and still have peace in your heart? And Leon teared up. Mm-hmm. Now, what was amazing about that is Leon was not a man who cried, right? Leon was a man who made other people cry. But because in his mind, he had it like it was going to be one or the other. And he'd already made his choice. He'd already made the choice that he had gone this route. He was way too far down. And so happiness was off the table for him. Peace in his heart was off the table. But in reality, your degree of success, whether you're worth $80 million or whether you have $80 in the bank, has nothing to do with your true happiness. Now, I like to work with high performers because I like the ones that are coming, that are on the edge of that realization. But the truth is, I've worked with everyone from, CEOs to very famous professional athletes to stay-at-home moms. It doesn't matter. If you're ready to be on that journey to really see maybe there's something else, maybe this path I've been pursuing isn't going to lead me to a place of true happiness, I want to talk with you. And like Danielle said, I'm very happy to have a conversation. I almost always spend, according to the consultants anyway, way too long on the phone with people. Meaning, like I tell people, schedule 90 minutes for that first call, because I want to spend enough time with you to make sure that there's a shift that's happened.
Yeah.
I want you to leave that call with an experience of your true self, not just an idea about it. And I don't charge for it. It's just a way to see. And then if we're a good fit, we'll talk more, which is cool. And if we're not, that's fine too. I'm creating some group coaching programs and other things that are going to be other ways of working together. But that's just, we'll see how the logistics work out with that stuff.
Yeah, I've got a similar experience having worked with the top financial advisors in the industry. And one of the very first guys that I worked with as a client was in 1993. He came in with the most crystallized goals that he had really put a lot of work into. I was very impressed with that. We worked together. He hit those goals, and they were quantum leaps from where he was, but nothing changed for him. It was kind of as though he thought if he hit this one massive income goal and another very significant for him athletic goal, that people were going to be holding parades for him, and suddenly his life was going to change. And he had been my friend before he was my client. And I said to him, dude, if you think I'm going to like you more because you make more money, or because you're the #1 ranked tennis player in your age group in this county, you're nuts. I love hanging out with you because I love you and you're fun and you make me laugh. And I couldn't care less how much money you made. And that kind of began that journey for me, initially working with outer game, kind of how do you make more money, which I've given that up about 4 or 5 years ago, and now work exclusively with what's going on in the inside and helping people tap into the innate resilience and well-being and happiness and joy and peace that are our true authentic selves. And as you said, it's interesting. I frequently will have a conversation where somebody will say, so what am I supposed to do? Am I just going to sit under a tree and meditate for the rest of my life? And my answer to that, it's always caught me weird that has to be the result of the work that we're doing, at least according to the story that they're telling themselves currently. And I'm like, well, that'll always be an option. But if you're not doing that now, I see no reason for you to start doing that. And, Buddha is said to have said, before enlightenment, you chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, you chop wood and carry water, meaning you still have all of the challenges that are ever present in the human experience. It's just who you are and how you're showing up is completely different. And your access to internal resources is a lot deeper.
Yeah.
Guys, it's been a blast. Thank you very much for the generosity of your time. Malcolm has been flashing up my contact information. So if you have an interest in getting in contact with me, you know how to do that. We will post this replay, and we are committed as the Presence Posse. There are, I believe, 9 of us in the group that we will be broadcasting at this time, 12 Pacific, 3 in the East, 8 in UK, yeah, and 7 Central, wherever. Do the math off of that. Every Monday at noon Pacific, we're going to be going live. We will also, as we are inspired to do so, do maybe a special Thursday edition of our Monday show, and we'll give you plenty of announcements. We do have a page, the Presence Posse page, where you can be kept up to date with all of us and what's going on. So those of you who have tuned in or watched the replay, Thank you very much for the investment of your time. And Danielle and Fred, thank you very much.
And thank you,
Thank
Bobby,
you.
for moderating.
Yeah, my
We
pleasure.
appreciate that as well.
All right. Until the next time we posse up.
That's right.
That's all for now. Yeehaw.